Hi and welcome. My name is Mattias Lögdberg, and today we're going to talk about role-based access using Azure API Management and Auth0. First off, we're going to go and define what role-based access is, and let's just go ahead and visualize something with me, and let's see. So let's say you're standing in front of a multi-apartment building. So there's 4 apartments in this building. One of them is yours. It's on the second floor to the right. And on the bottom floor, you have underneath you have the young couple who's already happy, energized, and you like him. And then on the opposite side, you have the old lady with all the cats. So if you use your digital keycard and you go into the main door, you open it using the key lock, it's gonna open up and you will have grant access. If you walk in and you try your keycard on the young couple's door, it will say access denied. But if you take the stairs up and you walk towards your door, you use a keycard with your door, it's going to get access granted. And when the young couple comes home, they use their keycard. They can access the main door, and then they can use it to access their door. But if they try it on the old lady with the cats, it will get an access denied. So all of these has different access levels. And then if we add in the janitor is an admin. So when he comes with his keycard, he will be able to open the main door. He will be able to go to the young couple's door, open that one, going in, doing his stuffs, and then he can walk across the hall to the old lady, use his keycard over there, and access their doors. And there's also other doors in the building that he can access that we can't. We'll live there. So this is the access level we want to be able to achieve inside of API management as well. Because if we see the building as an API and we see each apartment or entry door as an operation, we want to be able to actually give different access to different doors depending on the access level or depending on the person. Which means an admin could have access to everything, but for me, I will only have access to main door and my apartment. That's exactly what we want to achieve inside of API management. So we did a session last time setting up trust between API management and Auth0. So we will utilize that today. So if you haven't seen the part, go ahead and check that out. So let's get started. Let's just draw up where we left off last session. So let's change to my drawing. And let's go ahead and pick black for my API management instance. So here we go. We got our API management instance. We got our orders API. We got create. We got update. We got read all. We got read my. And we got read by customer ID. And we had our Auth0 instance. So inside of Auth0, we create a representation of our API management instance. We enabled trust between these two. That trust is actually granted via a policy that we used on our operations. That's called validate job token. The policy is the one who's actually enforcing the trust. So it's saying that should I trust this token that's sent to me, or is it not valid? Unauthorized? Is it an authorized call? We also created a consumer that we mimicked via Postman, and we'll continue doing that today. We create a representation of the consumer A inside of Auth0. Oh, bad drawing. Let's just see. Just gonna go ahead and do consumer A. With that set up, we were able to get the token, and we also granted access to API management with a 4-hour consumer A. Last time, so we could get a token back, and in the request from consumer A, we then had the token, and we also added the subscription key. So in this case, the subscription key gives us access to the orders API, and the token, which will actually give us, as it's configured right now, to the whole API management instance. So it's a little bit like giving access to a whole block or with buildings. So if our API is a building, but we want to go more granular than that, because we want to be able to say what doors inside of the building that we will grant access to. In order to do this, we will use our orders API, and we have a function called create orders, which we will allow our consumer to use because we want them to add orders. We want them to actually use update because they want to change something on their orders. They're going to be able to do that. And they're also going to be able to read my orders because we want the consumer to actually see what they have ordered, order history, and statuses of orders. So that's all that. And then we have read all. That should be an admin feature, and read by customer. That also should be an admin feature, since we don't want our consumers to read other orders. That's going to be, I want to buy from a store at least where my competitor could be able to actually see what I was ordering. That wouldn't be too good. So this is where we are at now, and now we need to enforce this restrictions that we have drawn out, the blue and the red ones. So in order to do this, we need to have a place to add this. Inside of API management, we can't do much more at this point, but if we go into Auth0, we can do a little bit of stuff there. So in Auth0, on the representation of our API management instance, we can add something called permissions. So then we can add a permission per operation. So I will add these 5 ones. And when I've added those, I can actually grant access for my consumer. So my consumer over here can give access to my 3 APIs that I want them to be. So there we go. Have access to those 3. Create, update, and read my. And then we will be able to get that information into the token. So then when we collect the token, we will be able to see what kind of permissions they have. And then in API management, we can add something called a claim check. So the claim check is there for enforcing this permission that we are setting up. So let's just take a look how we do this in API management, how we do this in Auth0. So let's jump into Auth0. So Auth0, and as you remember, we're going to jump right into APIs. In APIs, we have our MLogdberg API, and during that one, we have standard setup. Haven't done anything on the settings, but on the permissions, I've prepared some stuff because to save some time. So in this one, we have a list of permissions. This is blank by default. And if you want to add a new one, you just add permission scope, and then you have, as mentioned, read, let's say articles, for instance, and then read articles. If I press add, it will add into the list. I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to go ahead and say that I would encourage you to use a good naming standard for permissions to make sure that you can easily find them later on, because if this grows to a long list, you want to be able to do that and have a plan for that. So when I have these permissions, I can actually go into my, let's go ahead and just go back to the drawing. So I've enforced my permissions over here. And now I need to do a grant this access to my consumer. So let's just head in to Auth0 and applications and find our customer A, consumer A. Let's go into consumer A and let's look it out. It's all standard as mentioned before. And let's just go ahead and go to APIs. Underneath APIs, I got my MLogdberg API. I can add unauthorize and add access. And when I do that, I have now the possibility, since I added the permissions, I have the possibility to actually grant permissions as well. So I can go in and add create order, update order, and read my orders just as I wanted to, and press update. So now we have actually made all the configuration needed inside of this. So our representation of API management has permissions in it, and our representation of our consumer has been granted those permissions. So now we need to enforce this down below over here in the real instances. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's just look how this is. Let's just take a look at the APIs, how it looks like, the cookie, the token, I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new token. Since we granted that permissions, we will see some changes. So if you remember from the previous session, we didn't have any scope because we didn't add any permissions, so then you don't get any scope. And if we inspect this token, let's go to this one and let's paste it. We can see that inside of a payload in the token, we have something called scope. And there we have create order, update order, and read my orders. So that's awesome. And alongside with the issuer and the audience that we went through last time. Yeah, so this permissions part add this scope. This can be used. We could use this scope right away into our permissions, but I will do some more configuration actually in Auth0 because I want to introduce what they can do. I want to show you that what they can do more. So if we jump into our APIs and we're gonna go into the MLogdberg API, I'm gonna go ahead and scroll down a bit on this part, and there we can see role-based access settings. This settings is mainly there for simplify the process of this permissions part that we're gonna enforce now. So I'm gonna enable that one, and I also want to add these access tokens in our, we want to add permissions in the access token. This makes it much more simple when you're using end users, mixing them with machines to machines, using your APIs, because then it will be a unified way of seeing this, and the scope, because the scopes will be a little bit different when you're an end user, so we do as well. It's obviously solvable anyway, but this makes it simpler. So let's save this one, and let's go ahead, enable add permissions in access token. So let's see how that changes our token. So let's go ahead and press send again. So let's inspect this new one. Looks like we got a little bit more payload. So let's go into this, delete the old one and add a new one. And as you can see, now we have something called permissions down here. The permissions is read orders, create orders, read my orders, create order and update orders. So in combination with scope, we have permissions as well. Awesome. Then we are ready to go. We are ready to actually look into how this could be set up in API management. Because now we have the token, and now we need to do this claim check part. We need to enforce this setup in API management. Let's go ahead. So let's jump into our API management instance. Let's go to APIs, and we will open up orders, and we will go to V1, and we will use the same one as before, get all orders. So before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and say yes, everything is set up. So let's just go ahead and do a get all orders. So if you go to headers over here, you can see I have my subscription key and I got my token. So if I press send, I'm going to be granted access. I hope I'm going to get some orders. Got a cold start, the beauty of serverless. So there we go. And if I remove my token, for instance, I will get an access denied. And if I go ahead and add it again, I will get orders. So as mentioned, we have the layer, the duplicate layer, the subscription key and the token needed. And now we will get into the next part, which will mean permissions. So let's go and check this policy. So in policies, we can do a lot of stuff. This is a restriction policy that I'm using now. There's other ones as well, like transformation and rewrites, a lot of stuff you can do. You can even send requests to other parts. But in this case, we will just want to check out the valid job token, and we have the config URL, which is the one to actually check, give the API management the possibility to check the token. We get all configuration needed. Then we will say that's an audience. So this is the audience of the API management instance, and this should be the same as if you go to API details. Must be the same as this identifier over here. And then we had issuer, which is my Auth0 instance. So that one's going to be used. So this is how the setup is now. Granting, as mentioned, access to the block. So this could be granted a lot of APIs, because this gives access to a whole instance. If I'm asking for access to API management, I will get that. But we want to extend this. So let's just go ahead and look into the docs for validate job token. Got it open over here. So validate job token. Validate job token has a lot of features in it. as you can see, you can add even more advanced checks. I will just go ahead and go for required claims because that's the part we'll use now. So I'm going to copy that and go back to my API management instance and paste it and go in and copy. Let's format it a bit. Let's make it more easier to read. And let's see value and remove this comment so we don't have so much in the way. There we go. So required claims, it's going to check if there's the claims are with us in the token. So if we go back to the token, all of these text rows like scope, quantity, QT, GTU, sorry, permissions and so forth. So issuer audience is all a claim. So if we go into our claim check, we can use that. So we can check these claims for existence and for values. So if I'm gonna go and check a claim, I will actually use the permissions. So let's copy permissions and let's paste it. We can match, we can have multiple values in this one, so we can match on all of those values or any of those values. This could be very handy if you're having like an admin flag, for instance, that you want to do and don't want to grant access on everything. You just want a major admin flag. You can do that in adding any or any of those. I will just use all because I will enforce this. The separator is good if you're using scope. So I won't need this for mine because mine is, if you go back to the token, mine is a list already, which means I don't need to take care of that. But if you would use scope, for instance, this is a string. And by default, if you just add a value into this scope here and you add a value over here, and you're not using separator, you will have to add the exact same value, which means that if you have a variety of options, you will have a variety of values. So if you use the separator with a space on scope, it will end up in a list, and then you will have the expected behavior where you can add permissions of read all orders, for instance. That I'm going to do today. Let's go ahead and let's go into this. Permissions, match all. I will just remove separator because I don't need that part. And the value, let's go ahead into the API over here, and I will have read all orders because that's the one I want to add to this one. So I'm gonna add the value, read all orders. Perfect. Let's save this one for now. And let's just go ahead and try it out. So I will try again, and now I'm authorized. Just to prove my point, I will go back to this one. I will go to applications because now I want to show you that we have moved the mechanism where we give grant access to Auth0 rather than API management. And sorry, I'm going to go to APIs, and we're going to go down to our there, and then we can add read all orders and press update. So if I'm going to use this right away, it will not work because even if I'm granted access, let's go ahead and let's take the drawing. So what I've done now is I've been moved granting access to my Auth0 instance. So we are managing the access over here, but we are enforcing the access down here. So the claim check is enforcing what we are granting inside of Auth0. And we are enforcing it via the token. So in the token, we have something called permissions, as you saw. And those permissions are saved in the token, which means that whenever I create a token, I will get the token with the permissions that I have for that exact moment. And then I can use that for the lifetime of the token. So even if I did now granted one more access over here, this token that is alive will not get that automatically. I will need to get a new token. So because we are checking the claims inside of the token. So let's do a get a new token. So let's go ahead and get that one. We can quite swiftly inspect scope and see that we have read all orders, which means that we have the permission, and the permission is added to the list. So if I go to get all orders, I'm going to go ahead and press send, and we're going to get all orders again. So I've been able to change the access level inside of Auth0. Let's just revoke that back so we have all orders. Go ahead. There we go. So what we have achieved now is moving out, giving granular access to our operations, moving that out into Auth0. So Auth0 is the instance where we actually are granting the access, and putting that in a token and enforcing that in our API management instance, which means that we now can focus in our API management instance to restrict access. We can set up test scripts, we can set up test plans that actually will validate this valid job token, because we in our replica of this dev and test environment, we can do the same setup with Auth0 API management on different levels, and just trying it out, making it very easy for us to, as a developer, to make sure that we are compliant with the restrictions, and giving us a good test case. And then we have the Auth0, which will be set up differently with different consumers and so forth, but still the same kind of authorization process. So you need to go in to Auth0 and grant access to a consumer, and that's possible, or revoke. So the revoke. Just remember that the access is stored inside of a token, so it will be available for a whole lifetime. So if you grant access for something like I did now to my consumer, that they can have access to all orders, that token is going to be able to, you're going to be able to get to that API during that token's lifetime, even if you remove the permission just 5 minutes later. They're still going to have it during the full life of the token. So that's good to have with you. But this is how you set up a role-based access with API management and Auth0. And next time we will talk a little bit about extending this further, because there's more things that we need to consider when doing this. And I hope you like this session. Yeah, let me know if you have any feedback or comments or a new idea of something you want to see in this channel. Cool. Until then, have a very nice day, and hope to see you soon. Cheers. Bye.